Hi, this is Karen at Snickerdoodle Designs. This week I posed a question on my Snickerdoodle Designs Facebook page, and that question was, when you get an alpha set, do you prefer individual PNG files for each letter, an alpha sheet, or both? The response was overwhelming in favor of individual PNG files. However, some really still prefer sheets, and there were still others who preferred both the PNG files and the sheets. I did notice that there was a comment that some people didn't know how to use the alpha sheets. So today let's take a look at several ways of doing that. This is an alpha sheet from my newly released kit House Rules, and that is part of the also newly released Family Coordinated Collection at Digital Scrapbooking Studio. Our goal is to get just one letter from the alpha sheet over to a layout. Let's go ahead and take a look at this layout. This layout was created by a member of my creative team, Cabra, using House Rules, and she has used Yum as her title right here. Let's go ahead and make those letters invisible for now. And if you're curious why these layers are red, it's just that I created them, I just labeled them red so they would be easy for me to find in this tutorial. If you don't know how to do that, just make a layer active, right click, and then you can come down here and assign a color. And if you change your mind, come back to no color. That is available in Photoshop. It's not available in Photoshop Elements. So now we have the letters invisible, and we would like to get a letter over to this layout. So let me just scoot it over a little bit here. We need to get the layer over here by several methods. We can use a selection move or a copy and paste. So let's look at selection move first. When I am using alphas on a sheet, one of the things I like to do is to apply a stroke to it, a bright red outside stroke, not inside, because that makes the little tips of the letters more easily visible. If I were going to use the marquee tool and make the selection, it could be very easy just to be in a hurry or not be able to see that, especially on a transparent background, and you see I would have cut off part of that letter there. So I'll do Control D to deselect and come over to my styles palette and just apply a 10 pixel outside red stroke to that. That's just a style that I have of different strokes that I use for different purposes, but Adobe does have a default stroke in Photoshop Elements, I'm sure, and I believe they do as in Photoshop as well. So once we have a stroke around it, here's another little tip for you that makes it real easy. First, let me tell you, little selection methods usually vary. You'll have your first one, or your favorite one, I'm sorry. Most people will use the marquee tool. You can use the rectangular marquee tool, the elliptical. Those are probably the two most popular ones. Obviously, the single row and single column aren't going to work for this. A lot of people might use the lasso tools. Any of these would work, and some might just go straight to the pen tool. But because I think the marquee tool is the most familiar to everyone, let's go ahead and use that one today. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Now when you look at these layers on this alpha sheet, you might think that I just put them on here helter-skelter, but I didn't really. There was a purpose to it, and let me show you what that is. If you come up to View, I'd like you to make sure that you have Snap to checked, because we're going to use a grid, and you do that by going to Extras, and when you click on Extras, your grid will show. If you don't like the way that the grid is set up here, you can set up your own grid, your own line colors, the spacing under Preferences, and you can come down here and do that. Specific information on that is in this written tutorial on the Studio blog. But now if you look at this grid, you can see that each letter is contained within its own grid. The B is not hanging into part of the A area. Each one has its own space. And the reason for that is When we use the marquee tool and we have Snap to selected, if I click right here and hold the mouse and draw out my selection, when I get near those grid lines, it will snap into place. You can just feel it snap. And now that way you know you have that whole letter selected and you haven't cut off any part of it. So once you have it selected, come up to your Move tool, come back to your document alpha sheet, and just drag this letter over to your layout. Now you'll notice that it has copied and pasted it. It has not deleted it. Your alpha sheet's still intact. And I'm going to hit Control D to deselect that. And now I could, if this was a Y, move it down here and go ahead and get my title all set up. Now that's one way of doing it, and that is the selection and move method. But you can also just copy and paste. For copy and paste, I still like to use the stroke just to make sure that I get it all. But we will come over here and make sure we're on the Move tool. Click on our letter. I'm sorry, not the Move tool, but the Marquee tool. And we're going to still make a selection. But now we can just click on that. Click on our letter. And we can go up to edit copy. Or I typically use the keyboard shortcut, Control C, and then click on my document and make sure we're up at the top here, and Control V for paste. And it actually pasted way down at the bottom of the document, so I'm just going to bring it up here where we can see it. And there is the Control C copy, Control V paste. And you notice that when you drag it over onto the other document, that stroke is not visible any longer. So let's go ahead and get rid of those. Let's make those invisible. Bring back our Yum title. And by doing this copy paste or the selection move, you can easily get your letters over onto your layout. And that's really all there is to it. It's very, very simple. Another interesting point that was brought up in the Facebook post, though, was how much hard drive space individual PNG files take up versus alpha sheets. And I decided to test that with this alpha sheet versus the PNG files, and I was really surprised to find out that the alpha sheets took up quite a bit of space. I actually have this on the document here, and the alpha sheets took up 6.1 megabytes, and the individual PNG files took up 29. So I love this surprised little face. That's kind of what my face looked like, and I put out a call to anybody. Hey, does anybody have a surprised looking child's face? And Amanda Creations got her son Zach to pose for this photo, so thank you, Zach, for doing that for us. And that is the end of this tutorial. It's very, very easy to use, and I hope that this has inspired you to use alphas more frequently in your designs. They make great titles. They are wonderful to use in graphic word art, tuck into clusters. There are just so many things to do with alphas. So I hope you found this helpful and that you'll experiment with alphas in the future. Thanks for stopping by. See you next week.